The Vietnam War is one of the most controversial conflicts in American history. From 1954 to 1975, the United States became increasingly involved in the affairs of South Vietnam in an effort to contain the spread of communism. However, as the war dragged on and the communist North Vietnamese showed no signs of backing down, the U.S. found itself in a quagmire from which there seemed to be no escape. Ultimately, the Americans were defeated and the country was left in ruins. But why exactly did this happen? Let's find out in today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we will be discussing the Vietnam War, which is widely regarded as one of the most controversial conflicts in American history. The war was both a political and military disaster for the United States and had a profound impact on American society. So let's dive into the details and find out what made the war so controversial. The Vietnam War was a conflict that took place in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia from 1954 to 1975. It was primarily a war between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, but it quickly became a proxy war between the Soviet Union and China, who supported North Vietnam, and the United States and its allies, who supported South Vietnam. The roots of the conflict can be traced back to the First Indochina War, which took place from 1946 to 1954. The war was fought between the Vietnamese people who were led by Ho Chi Minh and his Viet Minh movement against the French colonial rulers. With support from the Soviet Union and China, the Vietnamese ultimately won the war and gained independence from the French. After the war, Vietnam was divided into two separate states, North Vietnam and South Vietnam, with the support of the United States and its allies. The government of South Vietnam was seen as a barrier against the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, and so the U.S. became increasingly involved in the affairs of the country. In 1964, when North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked and destroyed American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin, this incident provided the pretext for increased American involvement in the war. President Lyndon B. Johnson declared that the attacks were part of a larger communist plot to dominate Southeast Asia, and he asked Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave him broad powers to escalate the war. Over the next few years, the number of American troops in Vietnam grew rapidly. By 1968, there were over 500,000 U.S. soldiers fighting in the war. One of the key features of the Vietnam War was the use of guerrilla warfare tactics by the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. Guerrilla warfare is a form of irregular warfare that is characterized by the use of surprise attacks, sabotage, and hit-and-run tactics. This type of warfare is often used by smaller, less powerful forces to fight against a larger, more powerful opponent. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong were able to effectively use guerrilla warfare tactics because they had a deep understanding of the terrain and the local population. They were also able to take advantage of the dense jungles and mountainous terrain of Vietnam, which made it difficult for the U.S. military to effectively operate. Another key feature of the Vietnam War was the role of the media. The Vietnam War was the first war that was widely covered by the media, both in terms of the number of journalists covering the war and the amount of coverage it received. As American troops began to suffer heavy casualties, the media began to turn against the war. The televised images of dead and wounded soldiers, as well as the anti-war protests on the home front, began to have an impact on public opinion. The growing anti-war sentiment in the United States eventually led to the withdrawal of American troops from Vietnam in 1973. Despite the withdrawal of American troops, the war continued between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. In 1975, the North Vietnamese launched a final offensive that resulted in the fall of Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam. This marked the end of the Vietnam War and the beginning of a new chapter in Vietnamese history. There are several reasons why the U.S. was unable to win the war. One of the main reasons was the U.S. military's inability to effectively fight against the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. Despite the U.S.'s superior firepower and technology, the North Vietnamese were able to effectively use guerrilla warfare tactics and the dense jungle terrain to their advantage. This resulted in heavy casualties for the U.S. military and a stalemate in the war. Another reason was the U.S.'s lack of clear goals and objectives in the war. The U.S. did not have a clear understanding of what it was trying to achieve in Vietnam, which made it difficult to develop an effective strategy for winning the war. This lack of clarity was also due to the political nature of the war, as the U.S. was fighting against a communist regime. Finally, the Vietnam War was a major turning point in American history. It led to a loss of confidence in the government and a growing sense of disillusionment with American values and institutions. The war also had a significant impact on American society, as it led to the rise of the counterculture movement and the sexual revolution. The Vietnam War remains a controversial and divisive topic in American history, and its legacy continues to be debated and discussed today. The Vietnam War had a profound impact on all of the countries involved, including the United States, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The war resulted in the deaths of millions of people and the destruction of much of the infrastructure in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The war also had a significant impact on the global balance of power, as it marked the end of the Cold War era and the beginning of a new era of global politics. In recent years, there has been a growing interest in the Vietnam War and its legacy. Many books, documentaries, and films have been produced that explore the war from various perspectives. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., is a popular destination for tourists and a place where people come to pay tribute to the soldiers who fought in the war. Despite the passage of time, the Vietnam War continues to be a source of controversy and debate. Some Americans still argue about the war's purpose and whether it was worth fighting. Others continue to criticize the government for the way the war was handled. The legacy of the Vietnam War is a complex and multifaceted one, but it is an important part of world history that should not be forgotten. If you think we missed something or want to add more information about the Vietnam War, feel free to leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. Thank you for watching.